Hello, friends. I'm Miguel Beltran. I'm a freelance Flutter developer, and today I will be talking about how to create a server to process in-app purchases, all using Dart. So you probably have heard about this joke. You are looking for a tutorial on how to draw an owl, and the instructions are simple. You draw two circles, and then you draw the rest of the owl. How difficult can be? So this is how I feel about tutorials about how to implement in-app purchases. You just need to integrate the library that the Flutter team has done, and then you implement a server. So it's easy. Now, today I will explain to you a little bit more about this second part. In this talk, you will find the following: a quick intro to in-app purchases, followed by how to build a Dart server, and finally my conclusions on the pros and cons on using Dart for this purpose. First, I need to make a clear differentiation between what are in-app purchases and what is not an in-app purchase. So you're going to be using in-app purchases for stuff like digital goods in an app, like a skin in a game, like some in-app in-game currency, and also as well for handling subscriptions. For all of these, you want to use in-app purchases, or better said, you have to use in-app purchases. These are handled by Google Play or by iTunes, depending on the platform. And the bad news for your boss especially, is that they take a 30% of like your revenue. Payments, on the other side, is used for anything that has to do with buying physical goods, some sort of online shopping. So here you can use Google, you can use whatever Apple is providing, but also you can use third-party payment platforms. The integration is completely different, and also like they have lower costs. So again, we're focusing on the first one. When it comes to in-app purchases, there's three actors involved. There is the Flutter app, which is something that you are familiar with, and is the one that is in charge of starting the purchase process. Then we have a server, which in this case is going to be a Dart server, which is what handles the communication between the two different parts. And then we have the store APIs, which are used to verify purchases and also to handle the state of subscriptions. So let's take a look at a step-by-step process how it works when performing purchases. And this will be necessary to understand why we need to implement and how we need to implement the server. So you start the purchase process by clicking on an item on your UI, and then it's loading the native payment platform. No, the user is performing the payment here, and the library generates here what is called a receipt. I will be using receipt a lot today in this talk. Sometimes I will be referring to this as token, but you will see why. So with this receipt, the purchase is still not fully done. You have to verify this receipt. So for that, you're going to be calling into your Dart server, and you're going to be calling to a method to process receipts. With this, you want to call to the store APIs, and you're calling into the verify receipt endpoints from Google and for Apple, depending on the platform. This is going to give you back some information. We're going to see later what, but this kind of information, you need to store it into a database. And this will be stuff like the order ID. You're going to get also like the state of the subscription, when is the subscription expiring, all this kind of information. You really need a database to store this information. And then now everything went all right. So you can display whatever the user was purchased, you can display to them. Meanwhile, you also need to have some sort of asynchronous process that is checking the state of subscriptions. And that means that for all the subscriptions that you have active, you need to go back into the store and see what's the state of the subscription. For example, if a user has canceled a subscription, you need to know that, and the app is not going to be involved with that. It's everything happening on the server side. So check the subscriptions and update your database accordingly. When it comes to the APIs, they are slightly different, but they are also suspiciously similar, the two of them. So Google and Apple are both providing a method to verify receipts, or kind of like an endpoint. In the case of Google, you have the Android Publisher. And this is an API that you can use to get information from your purchase. Here you have to pass the receipt, and Google calls this a token. So if you look at the documentation, you will see the name token everywhere. Apple has the iTunes API, and this is just an endpoint that you can call, and you can just pass your payload from the receipt that you got, and you're gonna get some information back telling you if the receipt was correct or not, etc. Then you need to get events from Google Play and from iTunes to go back and check how the subscriptions are going. So for that, you're gonna need two different ways of doing this. One is talking to Google Play, but you don't talk to Google Play directly. You do that through PubSub. And I will be explaining a little bit more what PubSub is, but it's essentially a service that Google Cloud is providing where Google Play is, you configure it for Google Play to publish events into PubSub, and then you can go to PubSub and get these events that are coming from Google Play. So you don't talk directly with Google Play, you have this PubSub service in the middle. Again, I'll be talking more about that. With Apple, what you have is two different ways of getting updates. You can provide them with a webhook, and a webhook is nothing more than you create an endpoint and you send this endpoint to Apple, you configure it on the iTunes website, and Apple is gonna call to this endpoint every time that there is an update. So they are gonna be calling into your server when there is an update. Like, for example, someone cancels a subscription, you get an event, they call into your webhook and they pass you the information that you need. As well, you have the App Store Server API, which this means you can go to the App Store directly and get the information that you need and then update your database. The tip that I have seen is that you actually implement both because you cannot rely just on one. So you can have the webhook to get like asynchronous events coming into you, but also as well, you can once in a while get into the App Store, get whatever you need, and then update the database. The implementation of the app is out of scope for this talk. You just need to use the in-app purchases package. And this is really good. It's well supported by the Flutter team. It supports Android, iOS, and macOS. And it's a nice wrapper, actually, on the native APIs. It's actually easier to use than the native APIs. And the example that you're going to find in the repo is good. So I don't need to explain to you how to do it. Then you also need some sort of REST client to communicate with your Dart server. I will be showing to you how to do like a REST server, but you need a way to communicate with your server. No? So this is what you need on your app. To build the app server, I'm going to be showing to you how to use Shelf Route, which is a light way of doing that, but you can use Frog, you can use, I don't know, all the other ones that exist. You also need a database, as I said. It doesn't really matter what you use. SQL, FileStore, even if you want. You can talk to FileStore from your Dart server, so you can just do that. Use the following existing packages, and this is the important part of the talk, I think. You need to use the Google APIs package to talk to everything that comes from Google, and the App Store Server SDK package. And this App Store Server SDK is from a third party, is from like an independent developer that has created. The Google APIs, of course, come from Google. This is a good thing. So I'm going to be showing to you also how to do basic event handling. So I will be not showing to you today how to do the webhook. But essentially, again, is you create an endpoint and you configure this endpoint into Apple for them to call back. Instead, what I'll be showing to you today is how to do manual polling, both for the PubSub API, and so to access to the Google Play, and also how to access the App Store Server API. Other important things to do are having user authentication, doing asynchronous event handling, so implementing this webhook, and also optimize the polling. That's why I say that is because you need to do this polling to PubSub and also to like the App Store Server API. So you need to decide if it's like every 10 seconds or every hour or like something like this. No, so you need to optimize this for your use case. To build an endpoint, I find Shelf Route really easy to use. So you have router.post and then the endpoint that you want to create. And in this case, I created a verify purchase endpoint. So here, what you want to get is the following information from the device. And again, this is when the user makes a purchase and then they call into the verify. You want to get information about the user ID. So you need a way to identify the user here. You need to know the source, which means if it was an Apple device or if it was an Android device. You need some information about the product to pass also as well, like the product ID, but also if it's a subscription or if it's any other kind of product. And as well, the token. Again, receipt, token, whatever, it means the same. With this, you want to call into your verify purchase method. And your verify purchase method can be abstract in this case. No, you're going to have two different purchase handlers, the one for Apple and the one for Google, but they are going to implement the same verify purchase method. So the signature of the method is going to look something like this. The user ID, a way to identify the user, a way to pass what's the product that you are having, and also as well the token. And then you need some sort of response, probably something better than a Boolean, and you have your verified purchase. The complicated part about creating these handlers is, in my opinion, the setup. For Google, you need to go to Google Cloud and you need to create a Google Cloud project and enable in this Google Cloud project the PubSub feature. If you're not familiar with Google Cloud, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And then you need to create what is called a topic to publish events. So the topic is going to look something like this. It's something like projects / the project name / subscriptions / and then Google Play, PubSub, whatever name that you want to give to it. You get this topic and then you configure this topic in the Google Play console. So the Google Play console is going to be publishing events into this Google Cloud project, PubSub. Besides that, you need to configure the access to get into to connect to the Android Publisher API from your from your server, and also to the Google Cloud PubSub API from your server. So I'm going to show to you code how to do that. On the Apple side, you need to configure access to iTunes, and this is very easy. You just get like a key that you need to paste into your code. And the App Store Server API is a little bit more complex because you need to download you need to generate some keys, you need to download them, you need to load them. And also you need to handle like some authentication token when you connect into the Apple API, but I'm going to show you also like a little bit how to do that. So to configure Android it looks more or less like this. You're going to load your service account credentials, then you're going to create like a client credentials with this. And with the client credentials, then you need to create like a client Google Play, and then you say that you want to use the scope for Android Publisher and the scope for PubSub. Once you have that, you can take your client configuration and you can create the instances of the Android Publisher and the instances of the PubSub API. And this is already inside your server. And you can use them already to call to the APIs and to obtain everything that you need. The Apple configuration, it looks similar. You need to create an App Store environment here. You also have the option to use Sandbox for development and testing. It works really well. You need to provide a series of information like the bundle ID of the app, all of these IDs and keys that you're going to get from Apple. Also as well, there is the part about doing the App Store token logging handling, which means you need to store a token that they are going to give to you, and then you need to provide it next time. It's some sort of authentication process that they have. This is an example of how it works. Essentially, you're going to get a callback with the data, you want to store it, and then you want to reload it next time, etc. But this already gives you the App Store Server API to access to it. So purchase verifications with Google. You have the Android Publisher API already, and you can call to this purchases products get. And here you pass the Android ID, the product ID, and the token. And you get in the response back all this important information that you need, like the order ID, the state of the payment, the expiration time. You want to get this information and you want to put it into a database because again, when you do a purchase, the token does not contain this information. This information, you get it after you call to this endpoint, to the Android Publisher, and then you get the order ID and all the rest of stuff. You want to use this to update your database and to keep all the information in track. When you need to verify purchases using Google, then you use the PubSub API. And to use the PubSub API, you need to define a topic, and this topic is going to be like what we have seen before, the projects and the project ID, etc. And you call to the PubSub API doing a pull request of messages. So this is going to give you a response of all the messages that PubSub has collected during this time. And what the messages contain is a list of subscription events that have happened. They're calling them subscription notification, and also like one-time purchases also as well. So you need to take all of these notifications and go through them. And the important thing here is that these notifications don't contain all the information that you need. Actually, what they contain is also a receipt. So again, you need to call to the same method as we saw before for every message that you had to get the actual information. So this is only giving to you the receipt. And with the receipt, you call again into the Android publisher to get the actual information that you need. The way PubSub works is that you need to acknowledge every message that you process, but I will not show you this, but like it's actually easy. It's provided by the API. For Apple, it looks very similar. You have the iTunes API, and this is provided by the library that I have shown you before. And you have a verify receipt method here. You're going to pass is just the authentication key that you're going to get from iTunes, and also the token or like the receipt. This is going to give you a response. If the status is 0, everything went all right. If the status is something else, well, you need to look at the Apple documentation to understand what that means. To handle the subscription with Apple is actually different here. What you're doing is you're calling to the get all subscription statuses for every subscription active that you have in your system. And this is going to give you, you call this by the order ID of the subscription, because an order ID can have multiple subscriptions in it. And for every subscription that you have for the same order ID, you need to go and look for the last transaction. And the last transaction is going to give you information like what's the status of the payment, or like if the user has canceled the subscription or not, something like this. It's going to give you also what's the expiration time for this subscription. So you can get all this information and update your database accordingly. This, besides implementing the webhook, that is also going to get events like this. So getting to the end now. Pros and cons of using Dart to implement in-app purchases. Well, it's a programming language you already know. The package ecosystem is very stable. And as today, everything that you need is available. There is no obvious blocker, in my opinion, to do this. As well, you can run the server locally, and this helps you test if everything goes all right or not. Problems I have seen is hosting Dart is not as obvious as, for example, creating Firebase functions to do this task and then just deploying the Firebase functions. I also found out that you cannot have asynchronous PubSub triggers, which is something that you can have with Firebase functions, for example. In this case, you can have Firebase functions that are being called when you get a PubSub event. Here, you have to do manual polling. And as well, you don't get first-party support with Apple, but I guess you don't get it anywhere else anyways. Key points, just for finishing, you can use any simple way of creating REST endpoints. That will be enough. Use the following packages, the Google APIs, and also the App Store Server SDK. Setup part, you need to set up the Android Publisher API and also PubSub to talk together. And also as well, get access to iTunes and the App Store Server API. For purchase verification, 2 steps, verify the receipts using the information from the existing packages. And also as well, you need to obtain subscription updates using PubSub and also the App Store Server API. And also as well, try to implement this webhook. And note again that PubSub is not providing you all the info. You still need to call to the verified receipt with information you get from PubSub. So you want to see a working example of this? There is a code lab from Google that actually shows how to do all the configuration steps that I have skipped today. And with this, we get to the end of the talk. Thank you.